Iran threatens to set American soldiers on fire amid widespread speculation of a potential U.S. ground invasion, while Pakistan hosts regional talks aimed at bringing Washington and Tehran face-to-face for peace negotiations. Do stay with us. Hope your work week is off to a good start. You're watching Press Perspective for this Monday, March 30th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. The military confrontation against Iran led by the US and Israel has marked 1 month, and today we touch upon the ongoing conflict as well as its broader consequences and the chances of an end to the fighting in the near future. More on this, I have Professor Min Jeong-hun from the Korean National Diplomatic Academy here in the studio. Professor Min, it's been such a long time. Welcome back.
Yes, thanks so much for having me today.
Lovely. I also have freelance journalist Raphael Rashid with us here in the studio. Raphael, it's great to have you here.
Good to be back. Thank you.
Raphael, we start with you. So as I mentioned earlier, we are marking a month since the start of the military confrontation involving the US, Israel and Iran. Let's start with some of the more recent developments, perhaps on the battlefield and more.
Sure. Quite a lot is going on, so I'll try to keep it brief. But more than 3,500 US troops arrived in the Middle East over the weekend, including the USS Tripoli carrying around 2,500 Marines. This ship was originally based in Japan before being redeployed nearly, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Additionally, there'll be apparently some more forces en route from San Diego coming over. Trump reportedly said on Sunday that his preference would be to take the oil in Iran, saying US forces could seize Karg Island, which of course handles most of Iran's oil exports. Secretary of State Rubio also said last week, at the end of last week, he said the US can meet its objectives without any ground troops, though forces have been kind of pre-positioned to give Trump maximum optionality, as he said. Meanwhile, we're seeing Yemen's Houthi rebels have entered the conflict over the weekend, launching several missiles towards Israel. I think this marks a significant widening of this war, if you will. The group previously disrupted Red Sea shipping in support of Hamas, and their involvement now threatens the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which of course in this area is where Saudi Arabia has been using to effectively bypass the closed Strait of Hormuz at the moment. Meanwhile, the death toll, the human toll, has continued to increase. I think latest reports are hovering around 1,500 civilian fatalities in Iran, including hundreds of children. I believe 13 US service members have been killed, and there, of course, have been several deaths reported throughout the Middle East as well. And I believe the last that we've heard is that a UN peacekeeper in Lebanon was killed on Sunday. Trump has given Iran until, I believe it's the 6th of April, to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and announce a 10-day pause on in strikes on Iranian energy infrastructures. He said that the US and Iran have been talking or meeting directly and indirectly. But overall, I think, of course, the broader campaign continues, and oil prices this morning hit $116 per barrel in the morning today.
Right, indeed. Professor Min, in response to the escalating violence in the Middle East, there are quite a number of pundits who claim that Mr. Trump's war of choice is becoming a war of necessity. How do you respond to this observation?
Personally, I don't agree with that argument. Specifically, I don't think that the Iran war was inevitable for US. I don't think so. First of all, it's not clear what backgrounds, considerations, and goals US had before it decided to go to war. Some people may argue that Iran was an immediate direct military threat to the United States, but I don't think that Iran imposed immediate direct military threat to the U.S. For the United States, Iran's nuclear weapons could be considered, could be considered as a military threat to the United States, but it was known that Iran did not have nuclear warheads, and it did not also have delivery means like ICBM to reach U.S. mainland from Iran. Instead, I think it was more persuasive to argue that Israel perceived Iran as immediate direct military threat, and it wanted to make a serious damage on Iran's military capabilities with the help of the United States. So Netanyahu's the persuasion and temptation to achieve regime change and finish the war in a short period of time, and possibly President Trump's personal calculation to become a great president who would resolve Iran's problems that the U.S. suffered from decades. Those kind of considerations made U.S. go to war. So, of course, at this point of time, it's not clear when the war will be over, but it seems to be very certain that it will be a big political issue in the United States, why and how U.S. decided to go to the war in the coming months and years.
Right. Beyond the U.S., Raphael, multilateral diplomacy is taking place. It took place in France last week under the framework of the G7 for a ministerial meeting to try to solve the conflict in the Middle East. What made headlines out of that particular gathering?
Yeah, I think the most striking headline, if you will, that came out of this was Rubio's timeline, speaking at the end of this gathering near Paris that I think spread over 2 days. He said that he expects the U.S. to finish its so-called operations in Iran in the next couple of weeks. He added that the objectives were being achieved ahead of schedule. Trump and his officials have constantly been saying that these operations or this war would last for between 4 and 7 weeks approximately. So now we're reaching the end of 4 weeks. So apparently Rubio's timetable or time frame is kind of fits these predictions, if you will. I do think there still were some tensions. France's army chief had been effectively complaining that the US hadn't even announced or warned to allies before carrying out these strikes, saying that Washington's unpredictability was impacting European interests and security. On the diplomatic front, Rubio did say that there had been some exchanges of messages with Iran about willingness to talk, but he added, and I quote, "We're waiting for further clarification about who it is that we would be talking to, what we would be talking about, and when we'll be talking." He also referenced the 15-point plan that Trump had passed to Iran via Pakistan, and Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, said that he was hopeful that there would be some meetings very soon. The G7 countries did issue a statement, and they called for the absolute necessity to permanently restore safe and toll-free freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. France actually revealed its military chiefs had met with around, I think it was 35 counterparts, 35 countries, to discuss the future mission to guarantee freedom of navigation once the hostilities quiet down, essentially. And also, Rubio did say that the UK was working to build a coalition, this coalition in particular, though he noted that it would be needed for the period after the war and, of course, not during it.
Right, and staying with G7 efforts to ease the violence in the Middle East, Professor Min, South Korea is reported reviewing its diplomatic schedule in response to France's invitation to the G7 Leaders Summit in June. Speaking as a scholar, what would be the implications of South Korea's presence at or absence from this particular gathering?
Well, as you may know, South Korea has been invited to the G7 Leaders Summit for years, probably 4 years in a row, I think. And it shows that South Korea is an important partner for the G7 countries based on South Korea's enhanced national capabilities. Most importantly, the G7 countries want to enhance its economic and technological cooperation with South Korea. South Korea has got the world-class manufacturing capabilities like semiconductors, large volume batteries, the bio-nuclear energy, shipbuilding, and defense industry. And the G7 countries expect South Korea to play a greater role in enhancing cooperation in the fields. Meanwhile, I also think that the G7 countries also want South Korea to contribute to securing the stability and prosperity of the global community, the security. It means that South Korea has been also considered as an important partner on security matters in the international community. And at this time, in terms of the ongoing Iran war, energy security is expected to be one of the main topics of the G7 leaders meeting this year. And I expect that South Korea will express its intention, what roles and contributions South Korea can do for energy security. So overall, I think South Korea's participation to the G7 Leaders Summit shows its enhanced international standing, and we can expect that South Korea will play a bigger role in the stability and the prosperity of the international community. So as the Korean national, it's a pretty the honor or the big pride that South Korea continues to be invited by the G7 Leaders Summit, because now I feel that South Korea is one of the advanced countries in the world.
Right, indeed, and that particular summit is expected to take place this June, of course. Raphael, you mentioned earlier the 15-point proposal by the U.S. to Iran to end the military confrontation between the two countries. Iran also handed to the U.S. reportedly a counter-proposal. Could you very briefly walk us through some of the demands made by these two countries to each other?
Sure. So the U.S. 15-point plan, which was transmitted via Pakistan, addresses Iran's nuclear program, missiles, and of course the Strait of Hormuz. The core demands include dismantling 3 key nuclear facilities, stopping uranium enrichment entirely, committing never to pursue nuclear weapons, and transferring enriched materials to the International Atomic Energy Agency. The plan also asks Iran to abandon its proxy network groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis, limit its missile program to self-defense use only, and ensure that the Strait of Hormuz remains open for business. In exchange, the US offers to lift nuclear-related sanctions, assist Iran's civilian nuclear program, including electricity generation, and remove the snapback mechanism that automatically reimposes sanctions for non-compliance. Of course, as you just mentioned, Iran has essentially rejected this and put forward its own 5 conditions of its own. They've said that they want a complete halt to US and Israeli, and I quote, aggression and assassinations with concrete mechanisms to ensure this war doesn't resume. They have also required for a payment of war damages and reparations. I think that's a very important point as well. They've asked for an end to attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon and pro-Iranian militias in Iraq. And crucially, they've asked for international recognition and guarantees for Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's foreign minister said on state television, "At present, our policy is the continuation of resistance. We do not intend to negotiate." He insisted Iran is only sending messages through mediators, which does not mean negotiating per se. And also there was an Iranian official told Press TV that the end of the war will occur when Iran decides it should end and not when Trump envisions its conclusion. So of course a lot is going on, and as I mentioned, Pakistan is the main mediator, but also we have countries like Egypt and Turkey that are also involved.
Right, indeed. Professor Min, as Raphael just mentioned, Iran, it's called for sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. What are the prospects of this particular demand?
Basically, I don't think that it's appropriate for Iran to claim sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Again, in other words, Iran's claim should not be accepted by the international community for any reason. So unlike Panama or Suez Canal, where the cargo ships use its facilities and services, the Strait of Hormuz is just open water or ocean, and by international law, navigating or using the open water or the ocean should be free. So personally, what Iran is trying to do over the Strait of Hormuz reminds me of the old Korean story of Bongik Kim-sondal. You may be familiar with that kind of story. And who is a history figure in Korean old tradition story. And it was known that he sold the water of Daedonggang River with a tremendous amount of money. And at the time, of course, the water of Daedonggang River was absolutely free and open for all people. So it is like the historical well-known fraud or scam story in South Korea. So anyway, Iran's claim over the Strait of Hormuz will not be accepted by the international community. You know, if the international community accepts Iran's claim, but probably in terms of the serious considerations that Iran have got the serious economic damage in terms of the unexpected war or the Israel's and the U.S. the unilateral attacks. Even if the international community accepts such Iran's claims, then we may see similar claims around the world that several countries want to impose the mandatory fares for open water nearby their territories. For example, suppose the situation where Philippines or China will claim their sovereignty over the South China Sea, where lots of the cargo ships path the routes to reach the East Asia and the Pacific Ocean the regions. And if they ask for the mandatory fares, it would be very chaotic, and it would be a shock for the international community. So it should not be accepted by any means, and the means and the regions. So it is truly sorry for what Iran experienced and lost through the war, but it does not mean that Iran has a right to impose mandatory fares over the open water. It should not be accepted.
Right, the Strait of Hormuz. Raphael, moving forward, there are pundits who say that the military operation against Iran is, and I'm quoting, draining U.S. arsenal that keeps North Korea in check. Do tell us a bit more about this particular observation, your takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, during the intense June 2025 Iran-Israel conflict, U.S. forces fired, I believe, more than 150 THAAD interceptors, roughly a quarter of its total global inventory. The U.S. produces 600 to 650 Patriot PAC-3 missiles annually, but in just the past few weeks of the current campaign, it is estimated that they fired around 1,000 Patriot missiles that have been used, and these systems cost a lot of money, around $6 million each, $1 million, of course, and they take, over a year to replenish. So the concern here in Seoul is that THAAD and Patriot systems have been withdrawn from South Korea and sent to the Middle East. Of course, over the past few weeks, we did see a lot of reports of these large US cargo aircraft kind of flying from here to the Middle East, coming and going several times, and it seems to have intensified. It's of course, and it's been also reported that of course, this was all going to Iran essentially. President Lee Jae-myung did address this several weeks ago, saying essentially that there's nothing that South Korea can do about this, but did maintain that South Korea's defense spending and military capabilities, which ranks around 5th globally, mean that even if they do withdraw these assets from the peninsula, that this wouldn't have a significant impact on deterrence when it comes to North Korea. And he also emphasized the need to build self-reliant defense capabilities for situations when external support essentially disappears. Personally, I think the timing, of course, it is quite notable here. North Korea does command an estimate, some people say around 50 nuclear warheads, thousands of missiles pointed towards Seoul within minutes of reach. Pyongyang is, of course, also under severe economic pressure, and I think the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, as we've mentioned, has pushed the price of oil barrel over $100, making North Korea's black market fuel imports even more expensive. So I think historically, when we see fuel shortages and economic pain inside North Korea, then we tend to see that the regime might escalate some kind of provocation or try to force Washington or Seoul, trying to do some kind of bargaining here. So I think we'll probably be hearing a bit from North Korea over the next few weeks.
Right, and keeping in mind what Raphael has just said, Professor Min, should South Korea be worried about the U.S. mission in the Middle East and its potential implications on security and stability here on the Korean Peninsula?
Well, basically, I don't think that the ongoing Iran war would make a negative impact on the joint defense posture or the peninsula-based deterrence against North Korea. So personally, I don't have any serious concerns about maintaining the airtight security on the Korean Peninsula. Of course, you may remember that my government, Lee Jae-myung government, expressed that South Korea opposed to the deployment of the Korea-based equipment like THAAD and the Patriot defense units to the Middle East, but it also respected what the ally, United States, wanted. So U.S. has got urgent need to secure more the military capabilities to go through the war in Iran. So I think that although some THAAD and Patriot defense units were sent to the Middle East, USFK still possesses has enough military capabilities to deter North Korea. And the South Korean military has got overwhelming the conventional capabilities against North Korea. So there should be no serious concerns about the defense posture on the Korean Peninsula. And I also think that North Korea would be very cautious in terms of the maintaining its posture against South Korea and the USFK in the times of the crisis, because the North Korea, there is some kind of the voice that North Korea would conduct some military provocations by taking advantage of the ongoing Iran war, possibly the power vacuum around the Korean Peninsula. But North Korea is fully aware of the imbalance, the military capabilities between South Korea and the U.S. and North Korea. So North Korea would not make reckless the military operations, because if it makes the serious mistakes in terms of the military engagement, then North Korea has a severe repercussion and a serious impact about it.
Right. On that note of reassurance, we shall end today's talk. Professor Min, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Raphael, thank you very much for your thoughts.
Thank you.
On that note, we end Monday's edition of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching.